Why did President Nixon veto the War Powers Resolution? Imagine a situation where the balance of power between the legislative and executive branches is being tested during a time of conflict. This scenario played out in the late 1970s when Congress passed a law aimed at limiting the president's ability to engage United States armed forces without congressional approval. The law was known as the War Powers Resolution. But why did President Richard Nixon, who was in office during the Vietnam War era, choose to veto this legislation? To understand his reasoning, it is important to consider the context of the time. During the Vietnam War, presidents had often committed troops to hostilities without formal declarations of war from Congress. This practice was rooted in the belief that the executive branch needed the flexibility to respond swiftly to international crises. President Nixon, who was deeply involved in the Vietnam conflict, viewed the War Powers Resolution as an infringement on the constitutional powers granted to the executive branch. Nixon believed that the resolution was an unnecessary and potentially harmful attempt to constrain presidential authority. He argued that the Constitution granted the president the role of commander-in-chief, which included the authority to conduct military operations. Nixon contended that the resolution's requirement for the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of deploying troops and to withdraw forces within 60 days unless Congress approved was an unwarranted interference. He feared it could undermine the president's ability to respond effectively to national security threats. Furthermore, Nixon expressed concern that the resolution could be exploited for political purposes, potentially leading to conflicts between the executive and legislative branches. He believed that military decisions should be made based on strategic considerations rather than legislative mandates. Nixon also emphasized that the executive branch had historically been responsible for foreign policy and military engagement, and he was wary of legislation that might weaken this tradition. In summary, President Nixon vetoed the War Powers Resolution because he saw it as an unconstitutional restriction on presidential authority, particularly the constitutional role of the president as commander-in-chief. He believed that the resolution could hinder the ability of the executive to respond swiftly and effectively to international crises, and he was concerned about its potential to create unnecessary conflicts between the branches of government. His veto reflected a broader debate about the balance of power in the conduct of war and the constitutional responsibilities of each branch of government.